Well, we've heard complaints in recent weeks that this election cycle has been one of the most negative in history. But does that matter? The fact checkers have accused both the president and Governor Romney of stretching the limits of the truth. But neither campaign has done much to correct the claims. We've put together a focus group representative of both voters from both parties, I should say, and we've put the question to them. Panel, welcome. So we've got Democrats and Republicans out here, and there's grist for the mill on both sides. But we're going to start with the president because he most recently came out yesterday after 2 months of not speaking to the White House press corps and was asked about some of the negativity, right, because this has been in the news for some time, and asked to sort of take responsibility for some of it or not. In particular, he was asked about this charge made by his deputy campaign manager, Stephanie Cutter, suggesting that Mitt Romney may be a felon. Take a listen to what President Obama said, followed by the comments from Stephanie Cutter, that campaign aide, that led to the question.
Are you comfortable with the tone that's being set by your campaign? Have you asked them to change their tone when it comes to defining Mr. Romney?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure all those characterizations that you laid out there were accurate. For example, nobody accused Mr. Romney of being a felon.
Either Mitt Romney, through his own words and his own signature, was misrepresenting his position at Bain to the SEC, which is a felony, or he was misrepresenting his position at Bain to the American people to avoid responsibility for some of the consequences of his investments.
It's a fact. If you're signing federal documents knowing them to be false, it's a felony. Anybody who's worked in the federal government knows that.
So, was President Obama being perfectly truthful with us yesterday? That's the question we put to you to kick this off. Let's start with you, Tony Sayegh.
Absolutely not. And not only is the contradiction from Stephanie Cutter, Robert Gibbs himself, one of the president's key spokespeople, has basically asserted that Mitt Romney did something illegal by having bank accounts overseas. This has been something that Harry Reid has mentioned from the Senate floor. Not paying your taxes is a federal crime, is a felony. This has been part of the consistent narrative that we've heard from this White House, part of that whole idea to kill Romney, which was reported as the strategy in Politico last year, so that the attention is not being focused on the Obama record. And the problem for the president is that there is way too much evidence to prove to the contrary of what he said yesterday, including on this whole Bain attack ad that comes from Priorities USA, which asserts that somehow Mr. Romney is now also culpable in the death of a woman, which even most Democrats disagree.
We'll get to that in a minute. But I want to ask a Democrat on the panel whether, okay, so that's you, Brad Gersman.
Yes,
What do you make of that?
First of all, there's no problem. There is absolutely no problem in pointing out the facts that he signed documents when he says he had no participation in the company in Bain whatsoever.
Okay, but,
so
but to the issue of whether, as President Obama said, nobody accused anybody of being a felon.
Okay, well, listen. There's going to be some missteps along the way. But the big part of this is the fact that we can't just say, you know, you can't say anything negative. You can't call out some of these things. There are plenty of attacks going back and forth.
Let me interject. Let me interject. But here's the question. So there's going to be negativity. But here's the question. Then do you man up and say, what we said was that he's either a felon or a liar? And I will tell you, American people, I think it's B. I think he was dishonest with you when he said he wasn't running Bain during those years. Whatever. But you stand behind the position that your deputy campaign manager put out there or not. I mean, can you get away with sort of the sleight of hand? Let me ask you, Ron Berger.
I think that's an important thing. There's this game of innuendo. He technically, she didn't say he was a felon, but that a felony was committed. I could see somebody say, well, we didn't call him a felon. We just said a felony may have been committed.
And that works in a court of law.
In a court of law.
But in the court of public opinion?
I don't think it works. I think that people are sick and tired of this level of campaigning and throwing. There's larger issues that this country faces that we all know. And the fact that the President of the United States and his competitors are dealing in this stuff is really a problem.
What do you, Zerlina Maxwell, you're a Democrat. What do you make of that, what we just saw?
I certainly think it's interesting that she said he may have committed a felony, and then you have the president saying nobody called him a felon. Obviously, that's problematic. However, I think that the bottom line is that a lot of these questions could be answered if Mitt Romney would be transparent by releasing his tax returns,
by giving information.
You're
giving me talking points, and that's how we're doing in this segment. That's how we're doing. I want to get to this segment is about whether truth matters, and trust me, we're about to get to the Romney campaign as well. But this is whether truth matters and whether the president owes us a duty to be honest. If he's going to make a charge, does he need to stand up? Bill McGurn, you used to work for a president, Republican one.
The general point is Winston Churchill said, a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth gets the chance to put its pants on. The specific thing is when we talk about political ads, they use words. People practice their sound bites. The word felony is a deliberate choice. Now, you can dress it up in ways where, as you say, in a court of law, you wouldn't be convicted of libel, but that's what it's meant to do. Look, the same effect, I think, happened on the false charge that President Obama is a Muslim. If you ran ads saying President Obama is not a Muslim, you're in fact increasing the number of people that think he is, because you use what people remember is that word and the president. And these are very deliberate choices. It happens a lot. It happens on different sides, but it's not a slip of the tongue. People are looking for words. They're looking for sound bites to leave impressions, not necessarily to persuade people
Now,
of
Governor
facts.
Romney, Kevin, I'll get to you in a second. Governor Romney, I'm going to skip ahead to the third soundbite, controller. But Governor Romney has also been accused of misleading the American people in his ads in particular. Now, there are two ads. We've got one of them teed up. One ad that he just has out right now that's talking about whether President Obama is stripping the work requirements out of the welfare program in this country, put into place by President Clinton. And the other one is whether, in his ad attacking President Obama on Solyndra, he inaccurately suggested that an inspector general had found some nonsense going on. Those claims were given 4 Pinocchios by the Washington Post and pants on fire designations by PolitiFact. Here's the first ad.
Under Obama's plan, you wouldn't have to work and wouldn't have to train for a job. They just send you your welfare check. And welfare to work goes back to being plain old welfare.
All right, so that's one of them. And do we have the Inspector General one, control room? If so, let's watch it.
More than $16 billion have gone to companies like Solyndra that are linked to big Obama and Democrat donors. The Inspector General said contracts were steered to friends and family.
The fact checkers tell us those are not truthful. Kevin?
If they're not, then the Romney campaign owes an explanation and an apology to the public for doing that. And I'm not going to shade, just because I'm probably going to support Romney, I'm not going to shade my view of that. Truth does count. The problem with this narrative, and for the president in particular, is that you have got a history of running the country in which deception, innuendo, misleading ideas or facts took precedent. For instance, in the healthcare reform measure, we're going to put it on C-SPAN and everybody's going to see it, and then they do it in private. There's more of a narrative
between making a promise and not following through and affirmatively misrepresenting. And we've been having this debate on this show for a while. Does truth matter anymore?
Yes,
do they care about telling us the truth? Let me ask you, Todd Starnes.
Megyn, it does matter. And look, I was in North Carolina on assignment last week, and people are fed up with what's happening in Washington. Both parties, they say, give us the facts, give us the truth, and stop shoveling this fertilizer. And yesterday, when the president said what he did, we smelled a lot of fertilizer coming from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So people want both parties to stick to the facts, and stop all this pettiness.
It's like, who do you believe, me or your lying eyes? You know, in this day of video, Bernard Whitman, when it's all on, it's all on camera with Stephanie Cutter and so, does it undermine the president's credibility and Mitt Romney's credibility? Absolutely. One who is our leader, one who wants to be, and not just being honest.
The truth absolutely does matter. It's critical to the American political process and democracy. The great unfortunate truth from Mitt Romney is that despite running for president for 8 years, the American public really doesn't know who he is. And you talk about PolitiFact, you mentioned that. That's an independent Pulitzer Prize-winning organization out of the Tampa Bay Times, rated 1 out of 10 statements that Mitt Romney has made pants-on-fire lies. Right. They also, they also went through, I think the matter of truth is important, so it's important to go back and look at.
Do you think that President Obama was not being straight with us on that felony clip?
I don't. I mean, what Stephanie Cutter said was she posited either this was true or that was true. She didn't call him a felon, but I think what's important to note is...
should our president be splitting hairs with us like that, Bernard?
I think what we should pay attention to...
No, answer my question, please, respectfully.
I think that the president could have said, I honestly think the president could have reinforced his point and said, you know what, either Mitt Romney lied to you or lied to the American people.
Stand by it. That's what I'm asking you. Should he stand by, if you're going to make the charge in an ad like Mitt Romney did or as President Obama did through his deputy campaign manager, do you need to stand by it, Stephen Sigmund?
Look, I don't think either of these campaigns is going to get accused of having a race to the top, in particular a race to the top on rhetoric in these next 3 months. But when you go back to accusations of innuendo and what kind of narrative has been out there, the Republican Party and Mitt Romney have been attacking this president really since the moment, even before he became the president, but certainly since the moment he became the president. They've called him a failure. They've called him unpatriotic. They've accused him of being a socialist, and they accused him of not being born in the United States. That's true.
The real
problem for Democrats, and by the way, I love when I hear Democrats cite PolitiFact because it is nonpartisan, and it's also called the whole Metascare campaign conducted against Paul Ryan in 2011, the biggest lie of 2011. They're continuing that lie today. But the biggest problem for the Democrats is they're stepping on their own communication talking points. Paul Begala, in trying to convince Mitt Romney to release his tax returns, basically made Mitt Romney sound like a saint. He's like, I'm sure Mitt Romney has this great moral conduct, high caliber, and that's why he shouldn't have anything to hide in his tax returns. But then all of a sudden, when it comes to something like his tenure at Bain Capital, when it comes to someone potentially dying because of loss of health benefits, Mitt Romney is a felon and he's killing people.
If you don't have the information, you can't make an informed judgment. And as a voter, I'm a voter, I want to know if he has done anything nefarious, and that would be information in his tax returns.
Don't you think, but on that point, I got to go, but on that point, don't you think the average voter at home is not spending all the time that politicos are trying to find out whether this is true or that is true? They just see the ad, or they see Stephanie Cutter, or they see the Romney stuff, and they just believe.
They just believe.
And believe and then repeat.
And you know something? If you listen to what everybody says about Obama, the anti-Obama voters out there, the citizens of the United States that don't like him, they make up all kinds of stories. Again, he's a Muslim. He wasn't born in the United States. These are not advocated. These are things that are being called for by the Republican Party.
The problem is the American voter. We've got a bigger problem. There's a lot of sources of information today. Right. People are struggling for a narrative. I don't think that it's good to not tell the truth in a political campaign. But having worked in a White House, I'd say it's a sign of the leader that's going to respond to that, because this is not a nice world. People are going to say a lot less nice things about you, and it reveals something about how people respond to that, whether they get their own message out and so forth, and it tells you what a leader is. I mean, and it's been like this since Thomas Jefferson and John Adams and Abraham Lincoln.
It's true. When you go back and look at the history, this is not the first negative. I got to run. Great job. Thank you all. Interesting as always, weren't they? We're taking your thoughts on all of that. Follow me on Twitter. Let me know what you think at Megyn Kelly. Megyn with a Y.